Alright, we're back again. We're going to do some advanced probing, I guess, to do multiple setups on the 2100 control using the multi-setup page to run multiple different programs, as well as using a probing, a manual probing, I guess, whether it's a Heimer style 3D taster or even an edge finder or anything that you would normally use other than actual spindle probing like a Renishaw to tell the machine where the parts are. So we've got two different pieces of stock in two vices. We're going to set these where this is an 1 3/4 tall stock, so we're going to set our Z to 1.75. So basically the surface of our jaws is going to be 0. We're going to set the corner of the vise to X0 on both of these parts, and the faces of these to Y0. So, and we're going to do that with a 10mm ball electronic beep sensor that we're going to load in the spindle. And let me grab that and we'll get that loaded in and going. Alright, so this is our beep sensor, and it's got a plastic ring that separates this section from this section. So if there's anything that connects electrically from here to here, which is the spindle all the way through the machine and back to the vices, this will glow red and beep. So this is a 10mm ball, so the radius on that is 0.197. If you use like a 0.200 diameter edge finder, your value would be obviously 100 or 0.100. If you use a a Heimer taster, 3D taster, or a 0 point, your coordinate would be 0 when it reads 0. So this is tool number 40. So we're going to go M6 tool 40 and cycle start, and it's going to put this tool away. We don't leave this in the carousel because it gets too much coolant on it. So it might take a few hands to do here. Let me pause it and put this in the spindle. Okay, so our probe is in the spindle. We've already set the length so the machine knows how long this is, and there's no run out. There's only like a ½ thou run out on this ball, so it's pretty accurate. So now we need to set up our programming deal. So if we go into setup on here, we have nothing on setup. So we're going to go to new setup, and we're going to go, we're just going to leave it at 1 setup right now, but we're going to go select program per setup. We're going to go OK. So now we have 1 setup. We're going to go add 1 setup. Now we've got 2. If we go over to our pendant and hit setup, and if you see on here it says multiple setup, setup select. So if we go to multiple setup, which means you're running multiple setups, and setup select, oops, there we go, setup select number 1, and we can basically come down here. Setup number 1 is going to be our left part. So we're going to come down with our probe, and I'm going to probe the very corner of this vise, or the very left side of this vise. So I'm going to come over here. Okay. And I always back it off 1 thou just so it doesn't sit here and beep at me. So now we've got 2 setups. We're going to go back to our home page, and we're going to go G92.1 X minus 0.197, and we're going to hit cycle start, and now it's saved that location. So now we're going to go up and over, and we're going to come down, and then we're going to probe our Y. Okay, and we know that these vices are trammed together, so we could set our Y the same for both. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our MDI page. We're going to change that to a Y, and we're going to hit cycle start. And then we're going to go back to setup select. We're going to hit setup number 2. Come back over here. Now you can see we've changed the numbers, because now it's on. Technically, if that was G54 and that was G55, now it's displaying G55. So if we hit cycle start again, it will now change both of these coordinates to that number. And if we go into our setup page, you can see we're getting closer to reality, I guess, as far as where these parts are. Since this is our setup number 1, we gave it an X value because it's over from our machine 0 in X, but our setup number 2, which is our right vise, it doesn't know how far over it is, so it is still at 0. So we're going to come up, we're going to go over, we're going to make sure we are on setup number 2, we're going to come down, probe the corner of this vise. I can come down a little more. Okay. Alright. So now we go back to our home. And now, since this is our current X coordinate, but it's also our machine coordinate, we're 10 inches from our X0 over, so we need to tell it basically X minus 0.197, and as long as we're still on setup 2, cycle start, and now it's changed it to that coordinate. So now our X and our Y are set for both parts. We can set our Z, and since again these are the same vices and they're both trammed together, the way I like to do this is come down close, and you can move the ball, and I usually do this with 2 hands, but it's kind of hard right now holding a phone, and the closer you get, the less that ball will actually jiggle. So getting closer, and then it should be right there. Oh, maybe 2 more. There we go. Go back up 1. So we're still on setup number 2, but they're both going to be the same height. So we go G92.1, Z 1.75, cycle start. It changes our setup number 2, multiple setups, setup select, setup number 1, same thing, cycle start, and that's it. So now the machine knows if we go, let's go X0, Y0, and we are on setup 1. If we go X0, Y0, cycle start, we go to the corner of that part. We go to setup select number 2, cycle start, and now moves over to the origin of that part. So everything's set up there. Then you can go in and do the same thing with the programs, where you can go in and get program. I don't know if we have many in here. We got a few of them here that have numbering. So we'll use number 6 for that one. And we'll use, I think there was a 15. We'll use 15 for that one. And then we'll go define operations. We can see our program numbering. So we're going to run on block or setup number 1, program number 6, setup number 2, we're going to run 15. And the only difference that you would do if you were using a Heimer or something like that is when you do G92.1, you would give it either an X, Y, a Z 0, or if you're using something like a wobbler, you would use whatever the radius of that wobbler was. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. So everything should be ready to go, essentially. You can, once you're in the setup page, you can save this setup has something. So if you have a fixture plate that has multiple programs that you run all the time that you change out, you don't have to set it up every single time. You can just save it in the save setup page and bring it back up complete. So lots of stuff here. This one's already ready to go with the define operations, but once these were done, they're going to turn green and be completed. You basically have to hit activate setups again to make it run, or to turn them back to blue, back into ready state again. So if you hit cycle start, it will generally just try to run on one of them rather than running multiples at once. So hope that helps. Let me know if you guys have any questions.